$6 billion spent, a fully finished nuclear power plant, and not a single kilowatt ever delivered to Long Island. By the time Shoreham was finished, there was no legal way to turn it on. Shoreham was not abandoned because of engineering failure or construction error. It met every technical standard. How did a project built to secure the region's energy future become a monument to irreversible decisions and changing public trust? The answer begins decades earlier, with one piece of paper and a promise to power a growing population. In the mid-1960s, Long Island was transforming at a pace few regions could match. Between 1960 and 1970, Suffolk County's population surged by nearly 70%, while Nassau County added over 120,000 new residents. By 1965, the combined population stood around 2.3 million and kept climbing as new homes and neighborhoods stretched across former farmland. At the same time, electric demand raced upward. LILCO's own filings showed peak electricity loads rising more than 10% each year, with summer usage regularly outstripping forecasts. The island's power system relied almost entirely on oil-fired plants, and limited transmission lines to the mainland left the grid exposed to supply risks and price swings. Utility planners, facing these pressures, looked for a stable, long-term solution. Nuclear power, then promoted by the Atomic Energy Commission as both modern and dependable, seemed the logical answer. In April 1965, LILCO announced plans for a 540-megawatt nuclear plant at Shoreham, estimating the cost at $65 to $75 million, with hopes to have it running by 1973. The project was presented as a responsible step to meet the needs of a booming region. Construction at Shoreham began in 1972, following approval for a single General Electric boiling water reactor, rated at 820 megawatts, an upgrade from the original plan. The plant used a Mark II containment system, a reinforced concrete and steel structure built to meet the federal safety standards of the era. Project engineers worked through a series of technical milestones, pouring the foundation, erecting the reactor building, and installing the reactor vessel and steam systems. Throughout the 1970s and into the early 1980s, the site was subject to regular inspections by the Atomic Energy Commission and later by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Each major phase, containment, reactor internals, and turbine hall, was documented and reviewed. By 1983, mechanical completion was declared. The NRC confirmed that Shoreham met all construction and quality assurance requirements, and it issued a low-power operating license in August 1986. The hardware was ready, and the plant was technically sound. On March 28, 1979, the nuclear industry was shaken by the partial meltdown at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania. While the accident did not cause widespread harm, it sent a wave of anxiety through communities living near nuclear plants across the country. Shoreham, still under construction, found itself at the center of a growing debate about nuclear safety. The event forced the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to overhaul its emergency planning requirements, shifting the focus from plant hardware to the realities of getting people out in a worst-case scenario. That spring, public concern on Long Island reached a new intensity. On June 3, 1979, thousands of protesters gathered at the Shoreham site, blocking roads and calling for the project's cancellation. Police arrested hundreds. Local news coverage captured the sense of unease and the determination of activists who believed that no matter how advanced the technology, the risks of a nuclear accident were too great for a densely populated, hard-to-evacuate region. In the months that followed, opposition no longer came only from outside groups. It began to influence local officials who would soon play a decisive role. Long Island's geography shaped every emergency plan. Shoreham sat near the eastern end of a peninsula, with just a handful of roads leading west toward New York City. County studies showed that even under ideal conditions, moving people out of the 10-mile emergency zone would take hours longer than federal guidelines allowed. Summer brought tens of thousands of additional residents and tourists, swelling the population beyond what the highways could handle. In February 1983, the Suffolk County Legislature voted overwhelmingly to declare evacuation unworkable. County Executive Peter Cohalan followed with a public statement. He said, "Shoreham should never open." Nassau County's cooperation was also required, since all evacuation routes passed through its borders. Without local endorsement, there was no way to meet the Nuclear Regulatory Commission rules that were put in place after 3 Mile Island in 1979. State officials, led by Governor Mario Cuomo, refused to approve any plan that did not guarantee safe evacuation. The legal path to operation narrowed to a dead end. The plant was ready, the system around it was not. By the early 1980s, Shoreham's price tag had already climbed past $2 billion, driven by design changes, inflation, and years of construction delays. Each year added new costs, interest on borrowed money, regulatory retrofits, and ongoing maintenance of a plant that still sat idle. By 1985, the New York Public Service Commission delivered a severe blow. It disallowed $818 million from the Long Island Lighting Company, LILCO, rate base, ruling that half of the most recent construction costs could not be recovered from customers. This forced the company to write off hundreds of millions of dollars as unrecoverable debt, straining its finances and pushing total project costs towards $6 billion. For accountants and rate analysts, the numbers no longer added up. The longer Shoreham waited, the more expensive it became, with no electricity to offset the mounting burden. In February 1989, Governor Mario Cuomo and LILCO announced a settlement. They agreed that Shoreham would never operate. Ownership transferred to the Long Island Power Authority for $1. Within months, plant staff began removing nuclear fuel from the reactor and preparing the plant for decommissioning. The agreement ended years of legal and financial deadlock, locking in closure as the only path less costly than continued delay or operation. Shoreham stands as a reminder: when trust and law shift, even flawless engineering can become obsolete overnight. Today, every major energy project still balances risk, consent, and public confidence.